Lydia, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Good to see you after talking on Instagram for the last few weeks.
I know, and I'm excited, and I apologize. I'm glad we're able to finally meet up with
Totally.
busy schedules and everything.
For sure. So we were just chatting. I was first made aware of you and your presence and what you're doing when you're on the Gamecasters podcast. And it was just a brilliant interview to listen to. It was so amazing to hear of what you're doing. But before we get into that, I'm interested. How did you first hook up with them? You became made aware of Jeff from your teaching work, is that right?
Mm-hmm. So after my experience at Gen Con 2019, that's when I first started my journey of integrating board games into the classroom. Mm-hmm. And I started posting it online, and Jeff got to me. And he was like, yeah, this is really cool. He was like, I'm a history teacher in Michigan. And I'm like, oh, I'm a theater teacher in St. Louis. And I said, I have an idea. Why don't we try to play games via Skype together? And he's like, that would be really cool, because he runs a board game club. And I said, that would be really cool for my kids to meet other people that look like them in a higher, high school level, and we could play games. So we started arranging meetings on Fridays, which I called Board Game Fridays. And so on my plan time, I would have a couple of kids come down, and we would Skype with them and play games. And it was the start of, and this was pre-COVID, so it was the start of figuring out that board games can be used virtually, mm-hmm. and how it builds a communication. And that we've been friends ever since.
That's great. What sort of games were you playing?
We first started with Medium,
mm-hmm.
and then we did Just One and Drop It, where he had a copy of the game, and it was just crazy how it was just able to work. Before COVID, we were going to be doing a Google Classroom RPG session where we would kind of keep that communication, because the kids missed each other. Every Friday, they were like, yes, we get to go game with Michigan. And the Michigan kids were like, yes, we get to go game with Missouri. And so we would just have fun, and they started following each other on Instagram and Facebook, and that's how they were able to connect. And the really cool thing is that they're so much older. They're freshman through senior. I teach 6th through 8th grade.
Right.
And the kids were 8th graders that came down. It didn't even matter their grade level. They just had fun during games. And I think that's a big thing that's kind of pushed me to keep doing it, is that when I have a predominantly African American classroom, and I have a mixture of some Caucasians in there as well. And all different abilities, all different backgrounds. But when I'm able to put a game on the table, it goes away. And I just think that speaks volumes, especially in the time that we're in, is that they never questioned anything with, oh, well, maybe they won't like me because I'm a middle schooler. No, they just treated them just like regular little people.
Yeah,
and
sure.
it was just so cool. And so they're graduating on, but I know me and Jeff are going to try to keep doing it, because I think they would really love to do that still.
It's such a good idea. If you're playing games with people and having fun with people, who cares who those people are, right? You're just having fun. I think it's such a great idea. Well, good on you.
And I stress that a lot. And I stress that a lot in my classroom, is there's never an indication in regards to if you're in a lower economic setting that you can't play, because I was a positive representation of someone that, that is familiar with them and that they could play. And I brought something fun and engaging to the table. So it was just a nice time.
So how long have you been playing games with just your students for?
Actually, just a couple of months. So this next semester is going to be wrapping up a year.
Okay.
So it'll be my first full year of actually bringing it into the classroom.
Okay. And when did you start playing games yourself?
When I was an adult. If I think about it, in growing up, we played games like Life and Monopoly and cards and dice. But my first gateway game was Katan.
Right.
And getting into that type of hobby, that's when I started playing, because I had the funds to be able to support it. And then I started with Betrayal, and then I started with Coup, and then I started getting into other games. And so, yeah.
Who was the person that taught you Katan? Who was the one who said, hey, let's...
Oh, a friend. Yeah, okay. So before I met this is like a really old friend of mine. She was like, yeah, let's have a game night. And I'm like, okay, so are we going to play like Cards Against Humanity? Is it going to be like apples to apples? She was like, no, let's play Katan. And I'm like, oh, this is really cool. You could get really cutthroat trying to trade like wool for wood and brick and everything.
Yeah.
And I just really liked the strategy in it.
Yeah.
Because once you've started playing a couple of games over and over, like Monopoly or Life, you can kind of, it's predictable. You get tired. But with Catan, I was like, oh, this is really cool.
Another level.
And yeah, and I wasn't a really type of person to like go out and party. I just really enjoy staying at home and playing board games. And she kind of introduced me with that. Then I was hooked.
Who's this person? What's their name?
Oh, her name was Carrie.
Carrie.
We've kind of.
Does she even know what she started? Because getting you into this thing has since got loads of other kids into this thing, and it's just become a massive thing. And that's where it all started, right? Does she realize what she created?
I don't think she did. Unfortunately, we are still on the path of friends, but I did remember the last conversation I had her. I was like, thank you for always doing games with me. You know, we kind of outgrew each other. Yeah. And I started, because of that, my journey. So
that's awesome. Well, yeah, it's one massive gift for sure.
Yes, most definitely.
When she invited you round, did you know what was to be expected? Did she explain what the night was going to be before you got there, or was it a case of you turned up and suddenly there's this board on the table and you're like, what's this?
Well, we usually just had like game nights where it would be like a dinner night. So I would cook, she would bring stuff with her boyfriend, and she would bring games, I would bring games. But she wanted to share us this game, and she had frequently played it, and then we started making a habit of going over, having game nights and doing that.
Cool. And what was the first sort of modern board game you bought yourself?
Betrayal in the House on a Hill.
Okay.
I love that game.
That's a great game.
It was funny buying it though, because when I went into like the local comic book shop, they didn't think that I knew what I was buying. And I was like, yeah, I need this copy of this. Do you have it? They're like, you? I'm like, yes. Yeah. And I'm like, why? And they're like, but yeah, they start stuttering, and I'm like, yes, I would like this game.
Yeah.
As well.
I guess there's a look for the kind of people going to those stores, and they're kind of more me, I guess, like a geeky guy with glasses and a beard.
Yeah, and so when they see an African American female that's really nerdy walk in, they're like, are you in the right place? And they looked embarrassed. And I always tell people it's okay. Like, I mean, I've had a lot of, getting into this hobby has been kind of difficult because there's not a lot of people that look like me that play. And it's because it's like they're not aware that this is a hobby that they can get into. There are, like, growing up, we played cards and we played dice and Life and that stuff because the rule books are very limited. So, as you know, like if someone were to open a box of Scythe right now, they would look at the rule book and they'd be like, nope, too much reading. It's usually like, it's kind of like a spoken voice. Like everyone in the family knows how to play spades. Everyone in the family knows how to play Pokino. Sure. It's just a little bit easier. But yeah, I've gotten those looks a lot before, and it never fazed me. It was fun talking with them after, and you could see their body language change. They're like, oh, did I offend her? And I'm like, no, I just want my game. Yeah. Good luck, and I'll come talk to you and see you again. Because I started getting recommendations for games because I used to watch Will Wheaton's Tabletop.
Oh yeah.
That was like my first like experience of like me building my library. Yeah. Because I love tabletop. I love Will Wheaton. I learned how to play my games from him, and I just loved seeing them all have fun. Yeah, I have been looking forever for like Fury of Dracula until I found it at Gen Con. And then they ran out of copies before I was able to get there because it literally got lost on the ship there. And I was like, no.
Have you played it yet?
Yes, I have. I played it with my boyfriend, and his name is Zach. He's playing for games on Instagram.
Yeah, and his feet's crazy.
He's like the Photoshop wizard. For
sure. No one's going to argue that.
And so, like, I always tell him, like, you got to teach me how to Photoshop, but I just don't have time. Yeah. But I played it with him, and come here, Arthur, come here. And it's hard to play with two people. Yeah. It would be better for four.
Yeah.
And so we're saving that on the shelf of shame to when we can get more people to play.
Yeah.
But I did like it because for Halloween, I would incorporate that hands down in my classroom and have different themes and everything like that. So that's a game that I'm definitely going to incorporate if I have a lot of time, because I teach 45-minute classes. So I have to really be particular on what games I can bring into the room.
Yeah, sure. So what was the first thing that made you think, hang on, this board game thing would be awesome for the classroom? Like, that seems like a big jump. What was the thing that turned that?
So the light bulb went off at Gen Con's trade day. So my friend told me, like, yeah, you can go to trade day for educators. I'm like, what? I can get PD points and go play board games a day early? Yeah. I was so excited. And I went to an RPG workshop that was created by Kathleen Mercury, who's a big friend of mine who teaches 6 minutes away from my district.
Cool.
And so I was sitting there and she was talking about RPGs because I teach theater, easily able to incorporate it. Uh-huh. I looked around. I was the only person of color there. I was like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't faze me. And then getting to the Q&A sessions, everyone there said a positive thing about how board games could be incorporated in their subject. And I started getting frustrated because I teach in a demographic that is African American. I deal with kids with trauma. Who would teach these kids? Who would be able to want to incorporate this type of gaming into their lives when they never have been exposed to it before? And I got frustrated because my type of thing is that it can't be perfect. It seemed like it was too perfect. And my friend Kathleen teaches the gifted education program. I don't teach gifted kids. So, and they already had kind of a hobby in it in itself with doing cosplay and doing board game design. I had nothing. I was like on level 0 with all of this. So listening, I was getting more frustrated, like I said, and I'm like, I need some negative. Tell me what went wrong. And it was just like, no. And I sat there and I was like, who's going to teach my kids, my type of kids? And I said, me. That's when the light bulb came in. And when I came back, the first game I introduced to my kids was just one. And I modified it to where all 25 of my kids could play.
Awesome. So go back a little bit. You're thinking, okay, I'm the one. Light bulb's gone off. I'm the one that can do this. How did you do it? Did you say to them, right, tomorrow we're going to be playing a game, or did you just bring it in and surprise them?
I just brought it in as a surprise. Okay. Kids work very hard, and I work very hard. Everyone works very hard. We all need a break. And Friday at the end of the week, everyone looks forward to. So I was like, you know what? Let me try this. It could be our bell ringer. It was our opener. So I called it Board Game Friday. And I'm like, I'm going to introduce something new to you guys. You guys have been working very hard. Let's just do it. And I said, okay, you need points today, because I offered it as like a point incentive. Would you like your participation points? Yeah. All right, grab a board. So I got them right there. Only had to play one round. So I transferred the just one cards into a Google Slides format. And I basically had it clickable where, if someone was leading it, they would be able to click. Everyone grabbed a dry erase marker, a paper towel, and that. And we played just one. And it was fun because it incorporated everything. And it strengthened the ensemble, which is in theater, of community. So we played one round, and I was surprised. The kids were like, oh my gosh, Ms. Wehmeyer, this isn't like Monopoly. They're like, I like this a lot. Can we play again? So the whole 45 minutes we played just one, because each kid wanted to come up and like, oh, can I be the guesser? And it's like, okay, let's see if we can get to 5 points. All right, let's get to 10. Let's see if we can get to 15. And if they played, they got their participation points for today.
That's amazing. I guess for a lot of these kids, that was the first time they've ever played a modern board game and experienced what the potential is.
Yes, because a lot of it, with the community, it's just about awareness. It's like a lot of my kids are more prone towards video games and anime and just everything. They know of board games, but they only know of the two that's like commonly familiar in stores. But now that more stores are carrying more modern board games, they're a little bit more intrigued. But they
Sure.
just saw this like really cool thing and they're like, it's different. Middle school kids like to be surprised
Mm.
and they like things to be different. So after just one, it was a hit. They're like, Miss Wehmeyer, can we do this again? And I was like, sure. And so for me to kind of keep the hype up, we did it every Friday.
Awesome.
Every Friday, I did not teach. They used it as an open lab where they could catch up on work.
Hmm.
It's always a choice. Board Game Friday is always a choice because the biggest thing I tell anyone, you never want to force someone to play a game. If you
Mm.
force them to play a game, like if I was forced to play Katan, I would not want to play it.
Mm.
It needs to be inviting. It needs to be welcoming. It needs to be opened.
For sure.
So I was always last to play a game with the Wehmeyer. That's exactly what I wrote because some kids had to get work done in court classes. I let them use that time. If they wanted to just kind of chill and relax, maybe something happened at home, they could do that. They can catch up on my work or they can play with me. And so I had different stations marked off. So I brought Monopoly, I brought Uno, I brought Phase 10. So if kids felt more comfortable, they can go over there and play games. And then I had the main table, which is kind of my desk, and I brought my games. So I brought all my board games, and each Friday there was a different game.
Awesome. That's so cool. So that first week, did you ever envisage it was going to become such a regular, popular thing?
No, because I wasn't planning on doing it at first. I was filled with so much of doubt because I'm like, these kids aren't going to like this. Why would they be interested in playing a game? And then I just shook it off. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do it.
Mm.
It's like I just had to because now looking back, if I would have just had that feeling and I just stayed with it, the therapeutic opportunities it provided for them and the community building would have never existed.
Mm.
And I wouldn't have been able to share my story of what I'm doing and, you know, have the support from my superintendent to go to conferences and talk about it. And so I'm very grateful that I actually had the confidence to do it because I've had a lot of criticism with it.
From,
Some other educators.
oh, that's depressing to hear.
Well, they're mostly it's like, you're allowed to do this. It's not educational. And then I look at them. I was like, no, it is educational. I can connect it with any standard. I can connect it with my content. And I've done it. You just have to really think creatively on how this can be. And it's not a test. I could easily make it into a test.
Mm.
It's just the effort of doing it. But once I show them how it can be applied into the classroom, they're like, oh, I see. But on the outside, they just see kids just playing a game and not being engaged.
Mm.
But I think the fact that I can have a kid who has an F in my class, wants to be a leader with leading a board game that is in the same content speaks volumes. And I think
sure.
we forget about that with some of our kids that we're so focused on them becoming the best that they can be in that particular subject
Mm.
and forgetting working on the different qualities that a young person can bring.
Mm.
And I've been able to do that with board gaming.
Mm. So after it became a thing in your classroom, what was next? How did it get to the next level where people were thinking, hey, we want this person to come and talk to us and tell us about what she's doing? How did that come about?
I started documenting it on Instagram. I had a lot of criticism with that too, because they're like, you're showing kids on your Instagram? That's against teacher law. And I'm like, yes, it is. However, I had parents approve it.
Mm.
And so I had approval. And some people, if they see the pictures, they see usually the cover of some of the people, little kids in my class that are been approved by parents.
Mm-hmm.
And I shared with them, and the kids wanted to be a part of it. They're like, I want kids that look like me to show what this game was. And so they'd always have to like fix their hair and like, let me get some makeup on. I just wanted to challenge them. And it was therapeutic for me because like I said, everyone needs a little break.
Sure.
And I just started documenting and I started doing more. And then I started writing more of like, wow, okay, so step 1, be open. Step 2, strengthen communication. And I started making like a little research about it, especially with me and my counseling program. It helps a lot. So I kept going up to different levels, different games. I had my 6th graders play Betrayal on the House, and they loved it. So it was just really cool because I'm testing boundaries that they have never seen before and being challenged. They like to be challenged, and I'm giving them the opportunity in a creative way to be.
For sure. I mean, there's a lot of communication skills, there's a lot of math, there's a lot of social skills, concentration. There's the strategy element that's making you think about different elements. I mean, essentially, a lot of games are teaching you programming skills. I mean, I just can't imagine any educator would not look at this as a hugely positive thing. But if you were talking to an educator now that was, just neutral on this in terms of, hang on a minute, this is the first I've heard of this. What would you say to them? What would be the first game for you to suggest that they try and introduce to their classroom?
I would I always try to say to them, do an icebreaker. So try to build the community. I would go towards party games first. Like I would do just one, I would do medium, I would do telestrations, and I would just really, really focus on them being where they're light games, but they can enjoy large crowds of people. And I always tell people if they have a concern, they're like, oh, well, how can I do this? And I'm like, okay, you teach English, right? What are some of the themes in English? Let's work on role playing and just really encourage them to have an open mind. One of my friends gave me periodic table flashcards from his company. So I showed it to my 7th grade science teacher. You teach periodic tables. Well, I thought of you. Here's a tool that you could use. Have them develop their own game with periodic tables. So one project I'm going to do with my art teacher with like COVID and like the Black Lives Matter, my kids are going to create their own individual Dixit decks where they can use that. And I want to send it off to the publisher to be like, hey, here are some themes that you can consider, and have them draw abstract. And that's a way that you can do assessment. You're still doing it in your content, just a little bit of a creative twist to it.
Such a great idea. So the other teachers in your school, they're right on board with this now and incorporating it into their classes now.
There are like some of the other core teachers that have kind of like 20-year veterans. They're kind of old school in a way. Yeah. But like my art teacher, she actually joins us on Board Game Fridays. Great. And my orchestra teacher. So they're all on it. So because they've been able to see kind of like, oh my gosh, this is so fun. And it helps them be able to kind of relax and become therapeutic too.
Sure. That's so cool. So I heard in the interview that you did with the guys on the Gamecasters that were it not for COVID and everything being cancelled, understandably, this year, you would have been on a bit of a conference circuit this year. So
yes,
I'm so sorry that didn't happen. So sad. Did you manage to get any in before everything was cancelled?
Well, I was about to present for Origins.
No.
And then that happened. Right. I had gotten approved for Gen Con, and then I thought about doing it online, but I just energy and time, because I had this whole workshop where I would actually teach people like how to incorporate into their subject and provide lesson plans and resources and everything. And then the next one, I was like, I got approved for Essen. And I was like, I could have gone to Germany.
Oh, right. That's such a shame.
But you know what? I look forward to doing it next year. I look forward to touching base because I'm getting more information and I'm getting more resources and tools. And I'm excited to retweak it because I think what I have is very solid.
Definitely. So is your core message trying to reach other educators to show them the benefit of what you're doing to try and encourage them to bring that to their classroom? It's hard because I've been like really evaluating this. And I think my ultimate goal is just to be able to provide individuals the opportunity to be in a hobby that can be inclusive to all. Okay.
And one pathway that I can do it would be through education in my field. Another pathway would be to those communities that may not have access to it financially or, depending on color of skin. And then the other path is for the therapeutic approach. So kids with trauma can work and find, a self-coping mechanism. So there's all these different paths. I would love, because it's been in the works for me to create my own class where I teach RPGs and board gamings as a actor's toolbox, where I combine 5 different themes and we would use assessments with that. So, but yeah.
That'd be amazing. So is that sort of a long-term goal or something that you're quietly planning?
Um, it's currently planning. I have something in the works right now, not with school, but I'm going to try to do it with my school as a piloting, where a couple of friends would be, how should I say this? Developing like an RPG situation where we would teach individuals how RPGs can be therapeutic, hitting it in the school systems, but offering workshops that anyone could be a part of, especially with kids going through COVID. So I'm going to look through my district to see if I can provide that opportunity where if I'm just teaching 2 days a week virtually, let me teach the kids this way. So I'm excited. Hopefully in the next couple weeks or a month, I can like maybe announce it and just
Cool.
I'm excited.
Well, good luck with that.
Thank you.
What would you say if there's a teacher watching this and sitting there thinking, okay, I'm into this, I'm sold, I'm going to go out to a shop tomorrow and I'm going to buy just one and I'm going to take it into my class and give it a go. What would be your message to them to get them over that final hurdle to just go for it?
Just do it. Just do it. And don't be afraid to modify what your needs are in the classroom. You know that there's people in the board game community that follows rules to a T. It has to be this way. But you have to be willing to adjust and modify according to that. I usually teach rules as I go. And if a kid messes up, I don't scold them because the kids that I deal with, if they view any negativity with it, they'll shut down based on their trauma or home life or just school in general. So I always say there are no errors, even if there are some. And I approach it that way, which still allows them to enjoy the game, but then recognize, oh, I made a mistake. That's okay. We're still going to play. But just don't be afraid to do it. Anything that it can engage the kids, do it. And it's a big thing of project-based learning. It'll reach all different people. And most importantly is to have fun.
And I'm guessing you've seen some side benefits from doing this with the other work they're doing, the social interaction of the kids in the schoolrooms. There must be such a knock-on effect for how this is helping you and the relationships with the children.
It is, because like if I have a kid that is like, for example, I had a kid that was really down one day and I put a game in front of her and it was just a piece of paper and I had tic-tac-toe. I just pushed it there, because I knew she wanted to talk to me about something. And she started playing tic-tac-toe, and she started talking to me. She started expressing what was wrong with her. We played Hangman, and then she played King of Tokyo right after. And her mood elevated. She told me after, she was like, I just didn't know how to break that barrier of being able to be like, Miss Wehmeyer, I really want to talk to you about something. So I was really grateful that you pushed that piece of paper to kind of break that wall down.
Yeah.
So it really helps with communication.
Really. With adults, right? Let's say, like what you were talking about earlier with your friend who you used to play games with. With adults, you would very rarely just say to a friend, an adult friend, hey, do you want to come around and just chat? Like, we're not going to base this around food. We're not going to base it around a game. We're not going to base it around a movie. We're just going to come around and chat. You wouldn't do that. It would just put a ton of pressure on that interaction between you and that other adult. But in school, most of the conversations between the teachers and the students is that. There's no activity that the conversation is focused around. So as soon as you do that, as soon as you put that kid in front of a piece of paper and a pen and something else going on, it just immediately takes away the pressure from the conversation, and the conversation then just flows instead of being, well, if you're not talking, you're sat there in silence doing nothing.
And it's a lot of intimidation. What I realized with, why, and this is just my opinion, but I feel a lot of kids go towards video games because it eliminates the aspect of communication. You are staring at a screen, you have people around you, but it's not as, what's the word? In your face as board gaming. You're sitting around a table, you have to interact depending on the game, and it's uncomfortable. You could stare at a screen and me and you would be like, yeah, high five, woo. But there's never any, hey, what do you think about, what do you think about this? Or what do you think about that? Okay, we're going to go with it. So like the social deduction games and the co-op games really help, with them working together, because some kids are like, no, I don't want to work with you. You're not a part of my crew. But in a game, it doesn't matter. And I've seen more kids than not want to lend a hand, which is so awesome. The kid that was just yelling at the other person that they smelled is like, oh, well, let me help you with the game and all the problems go away, at least temporarily.
For sure. I mean, when I hear your story, I think it's just so amazing. And I'm obviously completely sold on it because I love games and I get it. But I can remember when I wasn't aware of games myself. Everyone was not aware of something before you made aware of it. That's just the way the world works. And I can imagine my version of me then hearing this going, that's weird. That's weird. They're doing games in the class. That seems odd. I can understand that. So I just think you just need to be able to have your message got to as many people as possible so they can give it a try, because it just seems like there's just an infinite amount of benefits to everybody involved in that process. What's the best way that people can do that though? I mean, just go follow you on Instagram, go watch out for
I don't know, like one of the things
appearance?
I don't know. One of the things, like I told Zach, like playing for games, I told him, I was like, and all my friends, I would love to go into schools, go talk to teachers, go anywhere and teach a lesson on how you can do this and give them tangible examples and resources and tools. Like I would love to start a nonprofit where the main goal, like I had like this title, like Game STL, where I would go into like the inner city communities and teach them after school how to game and give them resources or give them a game. Because I gave one of my kids Medium to borrow and she taught her family. And she never thought of that before. That's like one of the goals I would love to do, is just to meet with people and talk with people and give them examples, because I think more people would be more open to it if they've actually see it in action.
For sure.
And just like, what are you afraid of? Like Poetry Slam, the board game, I taught that as an assessment for my Poetry Slam unit. They did not know what a couplet was when I taught it, but when we played the game, they knew what a 2-line couplet was. So I'm like, this works perfectly.
It's a fun way to learn something that otherwise might be perceived as just boring.
Exactly. And so that would be kind of the approach I would go. It's like I would love to travel to different places, different schools, and be like, hey, here's a PD, not a boring PD. We're going to have fun, and how you can make fun an educational and therapeutic experience.
Yeah, for sure.
I think people just have to be open and willing for change and just be open and willing to maybe consider it. And if they don't, that's fine. But there's so many resources, so many things that you can do. And especially with COVID going on, like, why not? There's going to be a lot of kids that are going to be checked out this year. So I'm going to be really heavily game focused to at least give them that community back again as much as I can. That's
so cool. I mean, I would love to somehow get this message to my kids' school and get them to understand the benefit of this. But, as a parent, I don't know how I would even do that. Like, how could you approach that? How can a parent come up to a teacher and say, I've got a great idea for what you could introduce into your classroom. It's got all these benefits. It'd be really easy to do. And I see it being such a simple way to integrate a wonderful mechanic into your classroom. Like, how could a parent do that?
I'll take it in the shoes of me again. So one of the things that I did is that I showed them. So I took my assistant superintendent and I showed a game called Black Wall Street. His name is Devon, the designer, and I met him at Game School Con in California. I love it. I love the game. Literacy, fluency for entrepreneurship and business. We have an entrepreneurship class in my district. I invited my assistant superintendent over and said, hey, we should try to think about doing these copies. And I set up a time and we played together. And she really appreciated it. So I would recommend a parent just being like, hey, maybe one-on-one with the teacher, but like, hey, this is what I have. I thought maybe it could sit in with your classroom. Like, I think this could be really cool. My kid reacted. And then it's really going to be up to the teacher on if they want to take that. I know I was talking to a lot of people during like the whole, what can we do to incorporate more people of color into the hobby and just et cetera. And I said, the one thing that they should not do is force it on them. It's like, don't just send games to schools. Don't just send games into communities, because if you don't have someone that's actually in the hobby and is going to be willing to do that, they're just going to see it as a box of cardboard, a box of air.
Mm.
So I would tell that parent just to really connect with the teacher and just, this is what I noticed. Why not? But then also have the parent realize, like, if the teacher is not wanting to do it, it's okay. It's not saying that they don't think this is a great idea. They just may not know how to. Then they reach out to me, and then I'd be able to look and help.
I mean, that's what I was thinking as I was listening to you there. I was like, I need to get you to go into my school because I don't have your patience. I would go in there and say, here is an awesome thing, and if you don't do it, you're an idiot. I don't have the patience that you.
It's like, please, let's go. Let's do this now.
Yeah. Have you played Point Salad, the card game?
Yes, I've actually, I taught it to my kids, and I taught it with my kids in the special education program.
Awesome.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Like, one of the things I really want to do is teach kids with disabilities with games, because I've had that in my classroom where I've had a child with a disability participate playing Suro with kids that have not, and it was amazing. Awesome. It was just how it was just awesome. Yeah. I can't even describe it. It just made me so happy, and the kids so happy because it was inclusive.
Yeah, it's just a leveler, isn't it?
Yes, it was, and it was amazing. I think people are afraid to do it, and I think that's a big thing because they just don't know.
Yeah.
And like, I really look at games and I take rules out and I modify it to how my kids are going to do it. And so, but I also want to teach a level of independence. So going back to my kid, like, he had a para and he was autistic, and he liked to play with the pieces. And so we all played with the pieces to kind of not make it seem like, oh, there's this kid playing with the pieces right here. I don't know what to do. We played. We made towers. We had them fall. And then we played. And then we had a little tower break, you know, and he won. He won the game. Awesome. Or with Point Salad, I had a kid that was really he was nonverbal. He pointed. He pointed to which card he would want. And so everyone was on the level. He was just quiet. And then as a result, everyone else was quiet.
Yeah. And what else? What other activity could you put in front of those kids in that kind of diverse group of learning and mental skills that's going to level them out like that? Nothing. Like, you couldn't chuck them a basketball. You couldn't chuck them some math homework. There's nothing that's going to level like that, which is why I just think this is just such a good idea. Like, I think Point Salad should be on the curriculum. It just adds so much. I'm
actually working on that. I'm actually working on figuring out how to incorporate it into what unit for my lesson plans. Yep.
Amazing. I mean, I feel like if you had some kind of website where you could like lesson plan this stuff for other teachers around the world.
I actually want to. They have teachers pay teachers, but I've always wanted to start like a blog and have the resources. I'm going to be I've signed on to be like a guest contributor to the 5x5 podcast. And I'm going to be doing episodes where I take medium to heavy light style games and how you can use them in your classroom educational space.
Amazing.
So I did Dead of Winter. So that episode should be coming out. And the next one I'm going to do is Terraforming Mars, where I connect it with science and history, everything.
That's so great. I mean,
but I think once things settle on, depending on reentry, I do want to start my own website where I can have those resources where they can download. And I'm in the works of possibly working with ChooseCo, where I could get like a permission to how I can use their materials, because I've started transferring their books into a digital choose your own adventure for my class.
Amazing.
So I'm excited.
That's so cool. I mean, I hope these things happen. I hope you find the time. You seem like you're a busy lady, but if you can make that happen.
I want to. It makes me happy. It makes me happy. And I did this because I felt the education system was not making me happy anymore. I was getting burnt out. That's why I went back to school again, because I was finding different ways to combine my craft. And so right now, helping others with theater, helping others with board games, it makes me happy. And I would rather teach that, honestly, to show kids how they can be leaders in the board gaming community, inspiring more kids to be like, you can see me in this? Yeah. Why not? The biggest reason why we have such a kind of the same realm community is that no one is taking the time to bring the awareness that this hobby is for you. And that's what I'm doing.
For sure.
And I'll keep doing it.
I hope
I'm not afraid to.
I hope your students and their parents and your co-workers and your bosses at work know how lucky they are. It's just such a amazing thing you're doing, and I hope you can just keep bringing it from strength to strength. And next year at Essen 2021, I will be there front row, snapping away.
I hope. I'm going to resend it because I'll have more recordings. I'm like, here you go, please.
I don't think you'll be submitted for 2021. I think they'll be requesting you for a headline spot.
I had actually,
I'll try and fit it in.
I had reached out to different conventions. Like, I think I reached out to Dice Tower, and I was like, I would like to be your I don't know if I said it this way, but I was like, I want to be able to do a panel where I think at Dice Tower Con, or I don't know, one of the conventions there. And they're like, well, we're not taking submissions. And I kind of want to reach out again. It's like, I want to be an educational, like, thing, because I would love to do what I just did one episode on the 5x. But yeah. I think it'd be so cool if I could, like, go on Dice Tower or wherever else and be like, hey, guys, what about this? Terraforming Mars, science, gaming, space. Let's do it.
I mean, you so
when
should.
We talk about it, I'd be so happy and excited, and just, I was like, maybe I should start a podcast. I have all these different things.
I mean, you got a lot of plans. You need to choose one.
I know, but I can't choose all of them.
maybe get a team, and then you can do them all.
Yeah, and then it's just taking time for myself for self-care. So I've been trying to figure out which would be the best route to kind of do things and just figure out my schedule. So who knows? We'll see what happens.
Well, I'll be watching with interest to see what happens, and maybe we can talk again when the next steps happen. But
absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. It was fascinating.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.